City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'd like to call for the adoption of the agendas. Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Neal, that the council adopt the agendas as published in the February 15, 2018, and revised agendas published on February 16, 2018, and February 20th, 2018, for the meeting of February 20th, 2018.
Thank you, Councilor. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I'll go right into my mayor's report. This is a reminder that the deadline to apply for a residential rental license is Thursday, March the 1st. Residents that have questions will have the opportunity to discuss them with staff at one of two open houses that are being offered this week. Session 1 will be held on Wednesday, February 21st from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Session 2 will be held on Thursday, February 22nd from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Both sessions will be held here in the council chamber at Thorold City Hall. The Government of Canada's Smart Cities Challenge is calling on communities to create a challenge statement that demonstrates how the adoption of the Smart Cities principles could improve the lives of residents through the innovation, data, and connected technology. The availability prizes for the Smart Cities Challenges are first, one prize of up to $50 million. That's the one we'll shoot for. 2 prizes of up to $10 million, and 1 prize of up to $5 million. Residents of Thorold are invited to contribute their ideas on how the City of Thorold can use technology to make their life better and more efficient in Thorold. Residents can share their ideas to improve their lives by taking a short survey at www.thorold.com/smartcitiessurvey. The mayors and CAOs of the City of Thorold and Welland have signed a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, to work together on joint purchasing and procurement initiatives. This initiative is in addition to being members of the Niagara Public Purchasing Committee, which is comprised of government, education, and health organizations from across the Niagara region. The intent of this MOU is to find opportunities to jointly procure goods and services to take advantage of economies of scale. Each year, Thorold and Welland purchase many of the same capital and operational items. So this joint purchasing will help us in achieving better value and more competitive pricing. On a larger scale, this will create financial flexibility in our budgets and ultimately will benefit taxpayers. Beginning March 1st, a new comprehensive downtown parking strategy is being implemented in downtown Thorold that will streamline parking with a main focus on downtown customers to promote a vibrant and thriving downtown area. There will be 2 public information sessions on Wednesday, February 21st at the Frank Doherty Arena in the committee room. This session will be from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and the second session will be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Staff will be there to answer any questions. And that concludes my report. And I'll call for a regional council update. And I see Councillor D'Angela isn't here today, so there will be no regional council update. Okay, I'll call for the adoption of the minutes, regional council meeting minutes of February 6, 2018. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Longo, that the regular council meeting minutes of February the 6th, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Items for discussion in these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. General Committee meeting minutes of February 6, 2018. Councillor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ugolini, that the General Committee meeting minutes of February 6, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Again, items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Fire and Emergency Services Public Forum Committee minutes of December 5th, 2017. Councilor Longo.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Hanley, that the Fire and Emergency Services Public Forum meeting minutes of December 5th, 2017 be hereby received and adopted.
Thank you, Councilor. Again, are there any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest at this time? Seeing none, I'll proceed. No public meetings pursuant to the Planning Act tonight. We have one civic recognition.
I just have one thing under that,
Well,
under civic recognition.
yeah, we,
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you
I
want
just
to-
want to add that when I talked about Jesse Anthony at the last meeting, canteen chairman for 20 years for the Thorold Amateur Athletic Association that passed away, Councilor Hanley and myself have been getting a lot of feedback from residents asking if anything can be done in the canteen to name it after her. I can just report tonight that I received a call from the president of the TAA before tonight's meeting. They met with the Thorold Figure Skating Club. Between both organizations, they developed a plaque that'll be, and they talked to the family, and that is going to be installed in the canteen and very shortly.
so that's all, we don't have to do anything regarding, no?
Them two organizations have taken it on their shoulders because of all the work she did for them, and that is being looked after.
Councilor Whaling, same subject?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, there's a letter coming from the Thorold Sports Runway Recognition, which is designed here by the City Council. What we'd like to do is make this dedication formalized at our dinner on March the 27th, so we
Okay.
can work with these groups and we can bring it forward at that time. What we'd like to do is ask also that the canteen be named formally in memory of Jesse and Moses, which Moses did a lot of great work even before his passing. So we, our chair is coming to the next meeting. I'd like to be in attendance next meeting to bring this forward and get council's formal approval letter next meeting, first meeting in March.
Okay, Councilor. I'll leave that in your hands to
Thank you.
deal with the two organizations.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hanley?
On the same subject, just
Same subject?
on the same subject, as I said, as Councilor Uglini made aware that we've been, and we have to recognize, if I could just add that not only did she service 30 years, she was probably at the arena for 50 years because of her daughter and her son and being there, Kim and Guy, whatever, that they were always involved in sports on Thorold. I've known her myself for 50 years or did that stuff, so it's a great recognition, and I'm glad that the city is going upon what they're doing as well as the figure skating club and the TAA because it's well deserved.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anything else on that subject? I'll move on to presentations. We have Craig Finley, Chair of Thorold Heritage LACAC, and Heritage Week activities and presentations of the annual Thorold Heritage Recognition Award. Welcome, Craig, and we know who you're going to recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Excuse me. It is my pleasure to address you during Canada's National Heritage Week, as we like to do every year. Well, having enjoyed the great recognition of heritage achievements awarded to our city during the past year, Heritage Thorold continues to move forward. Our work will never be done. We are pleased to present 2 copies of Where Beavers Build Their Dams by our own Sarah Kinghead to our public library this month, and we are working towards a designation of another important heritage building in Thorold in the fall of this year. At this time, before I make a special presentation, I would like to thank and honor every volunteer who has served with Thorold LACAC, which became Heritage Thorold over the past 33 years. It is on your shoulders that the present members stand. It has become our practice to present an award of recognition during Heritage Week to an individual or group for positive contribution to heritage preservation in Thorold. This year's recipient is our own Pamela Minns. I met Pam in the year 2000. After my 12-year hiatus from what was then Thorold LACAC. No one was more surprised than I that the next year I would become the chair of the committee. Pam was then the age I am now. I know she's hoping that you think I'm 50, right? But we were the same age, I was the same age at that, or she was the same age as I am there when I first met her 18 years ago. No one was more surprised than I that I would become the chair of the committee, as I said. After a full career as executive assistant to a series of plant managers at Domtar Paper Company in Meriton, Pam chose heritage preservation as the focus of her retirement interest and effort. She has served for 30 years as the secretary-treasurer of the committee. If you know Pam, you will know there are no halfway measures. If it is to be done, it needs to be done the right way, with integrity, with accurate detail, and with style. Heritage Thorold has a business culture, which is a necessity when making decisions which may have legal implications. Pam has recorded minutes and completed all follow-up correspondence for over 350 monthly meetings. She has been active locally, provincially, and nationally in support of heritage preservation. She is a wealth of knowledge concerning the Ontario Heritage Act and is often contacted by groups and individuals across the province for guidance and advice. Pam is an unabashed supporter of our city. As a long-serving chair, Pam and I worked hand in hand. We lived through our, quote, voices in the wilderness days around heritage, and while we continued to designate many buildings, Pam would lament that our state of our downtown was a sign of lack of pride in our heritage and our city. There is little room for complacency in Pam's world. We all found that out. She is a meticulous person in every way. Not caring for your appearance or your action or inaction is beyond her understanding. You can imagine how important the recent changes to Front Street have been for her. Pam retired from her second career in January of this year, but her legacy continues. 3 men on our committee have divided her former duties. That seems about right, 3 men to replace 1 woman. Hey, well, Pam has been the recipient of many awards, especially those from the city. The recognition of your peers is somehow special. Pam, we learned a great deal from you about dedication, about determination, and about passion for a just cause. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present the Thorold Heritage Award for 30 years of tireless effort for the preservation of heritage to my colleague and my friend, Pamela Minns. Oh, is he? Sorry.
Should I turn this around? Everybody turns them around. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted, you never shut me up, you know. I just wanted to thank Mayor and Council and staff for their constant support of me and our committee in everything we were doing in the last number of years. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we did. And I'd like just to repeat what I said last month when I was here. We need to be very proud of our city. Thank you.
And our next presentation is Nikki Haluka, Chair of Port Robinson Darlene Ryan Community Center Board of Management. And they want to establish a beautification fund.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, members of council, city staff, and guests. My name is Nikki Haluka, and I am the chair of the Darlene Ryan Port Robinson Community Center Board of Management. My new committee and I took over in October of last year. We are grateful for all the support and help that we have received from Councillor Payon, Councillor Hanley, Donna Del Vecchio, Ginger DeRoche, and Curtis Dre, as we take over the day-to-day operations of the hall and help bring community activities and events to Port Robinson. Our board has already set out a number of goals, including increasing the rents over the previous years and to continue running the traditional events that have happened in our community for decades, such as the Lunch with Santa and the annual Easter egg hunt. We hope to offer a few more events, such as a Christmas craft show, a sock hop, and we will be partnering with other community volunteer groups like the Cooks Mills Community Center and Volunteer Firefighters of Association of Station 3 and Port Robinson Proud in order to bring the annual Ladies' Tea and the 4th annual community-wide garage sale. Yesterday, our board held a pasta fundraiser, and it was a successful evening with over 121 people attending and 24 people taking food home. The purpose of the fundraiser is to raise monies for future beautification projects and future events. There are many things that can be done to make the hall more aesthetically pleasing, and we hope to raise some of the funds necessary without asking for taxpayers' dollars. Yesterday, I would like to say that we raised a total of $1,605. $500 of that was generously donated by Debbie Barnes. My other purpose for speaking to you this evening is to ask if it is possible to have an accounting line added to the budget for the Port Robinson Community Center dedicated to the beautification projects and events. Monies that are raised during our events will go and to be deposited into the accounting line for future use. My board and I are looking forward to a successful partnership with council and staff as we move forward in 2018 with new goals and fresh new ideas to keep the doors open on the Darlene Ryan for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our presenter? Councillor Pion?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming here. I think that's a great project. I just want to say I'll be bringing it up later on in the meeting so we can get the ball rolling on this.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. I'll move into motions for support. City of Thorold, appointment to Thorold Public Library Board. Councillor Neal, referred to Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ugolini, whereas the city clerk's office was notified of a vacancy on the Thorold Public Library Board, and whereas on January 11th, 2018, a notice was placed in the Niagara this week seeking an appointment to the board, and whereas one application was received, and it is being recommended by the Committee of Council to review applications to boards and committees on February 6, 2018 for approval by Thorold City Council. Now therefore it be resolved that Susan Morrison be hereby appointed to the Thorold Public Library Board until November 30th, 2018, and that the Chief Librarian and Chair of the Library Board be so advised.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. City of Thorold, Councillor Neal, Refire Medic Protection, referred to Councillor Neal.
Thank you,
Referred
Mr.
by.
Mayor. As you all are aware, that the province is going through the changing the way health is and long-term care are done, and they have a pilot project in the process that they're looking for 2 communities to put ambulance personnel on fire trucks. And I don't believe that should happen myself. I have a resolution that I would like to bring forward regarding that. It was moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Ugolini, whereas Bill 160, the Strengthening Quality and Accountability for Patients Act, amended the Ambulance Act to permit the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to enable 2 pilot projects hosted by willing municipal governments to allow firefighters certified as paramedics to treat patients while on duty with the fire department, and whereas the Government of Ontario is committed to proceeding with the pilots enabling the fire medic model despite the absence of objective evidence to show that it would improve patient outcomes or response times. And whereas the current interest arbitration model, particularly in the fire services sector, allows arbitrators to impose awards on unwilling employers that directly impact the employer's ability to determine how it will deploy its workforce, as evidenced by the experience of many municipalities in regards to the 24-hour shift. And whereas in the absence of legislative protection, unwilling municipalities may be forced to enter into a pilot or adopt a fire medic model as a result of interest arbitration. And whereas the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario and its municipal members have called on the Government of Ontario to introduce legislative amendments to the Fire Protection and Prevention Act 1997 and the Ambulance Services Collective Bargaining Act to preclude arbitrators from expanding the scope of work for firefighters and paramedics respectfully through interest arbitration awards. And whereas there is a precedence for a restriction on the scope of jurisdiction of arbitrators in Section 126 of the Police Services Act, which precludes arbitrators from amending the core duties of police officers. And whereas the Government of Ontario has committed that no unwilling municipal government will have a fire medic pilot or program imposed upon them. The municipality of Thorold calls on the Government of Ontario to act immediately so the legislative amendments that will protect unwilling municipalities from being forced by arbitrators to have a fire medic pilot or program are placed within the upcoming budget bill before the Ontario legislature rises for the provincial election. A copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier Kathleen Wynne, Office of the Premier, Honorable Dr. Eric Hoskins, Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, Honorable Marie-France Lalonde, Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services, Honorable Kevin Flynn, Minister of Labor, Honorable Bill Moreau, Minister of Municipal Affairs, local members of the Provincial Parliament, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And if I could just say a few words on this, if this does happen, and we are commanded to put extra people on the fire truck in order to handle the medic emergencies, then we're going to be spending another $200,000 or $300,000 that we don't necessarily have to do, because our firefighters are already doing a great job in handling the medic situations that they have, and the ambulances get there in a timely manner. So I don't believe we need to have this extra body on the fire trucks in order to make this happen. I know personally I've had it twice. I've had the fire department come to me within a 3 or 4 minute time frame, and the ambulance there a couple minutes later. So I don't see the object of having this particular program in place.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Hanley.
Just a concern as to who's the willing or unwilling, or how is it going to be determined? Like, I know we've never discussed this as a council. So we're putting a motion forward, but yet it's not been determined who's going to be the willing and who's going to be the unwilling. So to me, I don't know, like, I'm going to support something that might bite me in, where at the end of the day. And that's my biggest concern is, because in the wording it says if you're willing to or unwilling, and that the government isn't going to impose this upon municipalities. But are there willing communities? Is this becoming about? Does anybody know? Is this coming about because there's municipalities out there that have been soliciting the Ontario government and lobbying them to do such? Or is there individuals out there that fear this is going to happen and they're lobbying the government so it doesn't happen? So when I look at the wording, where we stand.
Councillor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Usually when the government puts forward something of this nature, there's usually a public input period where the public gets to comment, and then municipalities can comment during that period. Through you to the appropriate member of staff, has such a period been established? Is the deadline over? Does the public have a chance to have input to this yet? Because in addition to us sending a letter, I would think the public would be interested themselves to look at this and perhaps comment to the government. Is there a public input period? Because if not, I think this is very undemocratic.
Okay. Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I get some views from our fire chief, see how his feelings are with the subject? I don't want to catch you off guard, Brian, but who might give us some of your feedback on it?
Through you to the mayor. First, there is still the opportunity to have public consultation, so now is a good time to put forth such a motion to to the province and definitely through AMO as well to put this message through that we're not interested in doing this. I think now is a good opportunity. We should do this. This resulted in a strong push from the Ontario Professional Firefighters Association. It didn't come through municipalities. It wasn't individual municipalities looking forward for this. It was from the Ontario Professional Firefighters Association. So now is a good opportunity to put this through and to show our position is that we're not for this at this time.
Councillor Neal, then Councillor Whalen, or Councillor Hanley.
I agree with the fire chief. I think by sending this in, we're trying to stop what I feel should be stopped. And this is the intent of this resolution. And I believe that the professional firefighters may be trying to get this involved so that they have more staff regarding this. And I think the Ontario government is maybe pushing this. I don't think it's the individual municipalities are asking for this. I think it's the provincial government that's saying, yes, this might be a good idea.
I just want to say, if I can, Ms. Mayor, to me, it looks like a step of eliminating paramedics. Hate to say it, more full-time firefighters, less paramedics. But what I don't see in here either is where are the paramedics themselves, because this is probably going to be a concern of them, where there's really no mandate. This is open for, to me, like they always say, when you get a contract, you might read it one way and I might read it the other. We might be doing something here today that, like I said, in the end of the day, it's not really clear what's happening here. Are we going to have extra firemen? Are we not going to have extra firemen? I know the chief has spoken his word, but it's a mandated in the Ontario Firefighters Association to do so. And where do we stand as a municipality? I'm lost on the subject, to tell you the truth, because to me it really doesn't speak a clear line.
First of all, maybe, I'll call you in a minute, Councillor Pion. I think because it's so foggy that we should maybe request from the chief a report on it, and then we can make a decision whether, and say to the government, no, we're not interested. I know we're not interested. The fire services today cost us 26% of our operating budget. We can't afford to have that going any higher. So I don't know, it's up to you, Councillor, if you want to ask for a report, maybe? Before we go any farther, the clerk's just pulled up something from AMO with regards to this, and I know AMO opposes this too also.
So the first line regarding the subject from AMO it says, there's only a narrow opportunity before the provincial election for municipal governments to get legislative protection from arbitrators imposing fire medic pilots or programs on unwilling municipality. This legislative opportunity is having this protection included in the upcoming budget bill expected in March or April 2018.
So we have to move on it.
So if I put a motion forward that we accept the recommendation from Councillor Neal, we're going in the right step, you may say, as to what
Yeah,
AMO
just-
wants us to do?
Yeah.
Okay,
Accept that.
that's what I wanted, some clarity on it. Thank you
Okay,
very
we
much.
just have to pass Councillor
Neal's
Neal's
motion.
motion.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other speakers on the, okay, Councillor Pion?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that there's two aspects to this. One is whether or not we need it, and I agree it's questionable whether we do. But also, even if you agree that we do need this extra person, this extra individual to help response time and help with emergencies, we have the emergency services that are operated by the region. But the individual municipalities operate the firefighters. Even if you were to argue that we needed the extra person, what I'm objecting to is that why don't they go through the route of emergency services, beefing that up to improve the service? Otherwise, this is downloading from the regional municipality down to the individual municipalities. So it's two things. One is to anyone who opposes it, then we can go ahead and do this. But even if somebody were to argue against us saying, no, this is needed, what I object to is doing it this way. You can do it by going through emergency services, improving response time, but it's not through the pocket of the small municipalities, through the taxpayers of the small municipalities. I mean, we pay the regional as well, but there's a much bigger population base for that. So rather than hitting small municipalities to pay for extra fire services, if they want, even if they end up wanting to improve it, and I think this should go in the letter, even if they end up wanting to improve it, they should go through the region's emergency services. And that would be less onerous on the taxpayer in the long run.
Any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. City of Thorold Age-Friendly Committee Business Recognition Initiative, and that's been referred by Councilor Uglini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Neal. Whereas the Age-Friendly Committee is embarking on an age-friendly business recognition initiative, and whereas the committee has drafted key documents, namely self-assessment tools for new and renewal applicants, recognition certificate, and stickers. And whereas, in order to move this initiative forward at the Greater Thorold Business Council Luncheon in early March 2018, the committee requires council approval. Therefore, be it resolved, that Thorold City Council approve the Age-Friendly Business Recognition Initiative, that the self-assessment tools for new and renewal applications, recognition certificate, and stickers be approved.
Are there any speakers to the recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. City of Welland, municipally appointed Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority representative. Councilor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Payon that the correspondence received from the City of Welland and at its council meeting of February 6, 2018, directing staff to prepare reports, policies, and bylaws necessary to establish a protocol and processes that will implement municipally appointed NPCA representative, that the process enable consideration of the member of the public, that it would exclude the appointment of a member of regional council, and that its implementation be the beginning of the term of council be received and supported.
Okay, so putting it simply, you don't want any regional councilors on the NPCA board. That's about as simple as I can say it. Yeah. Speakers to that motion, and that's Councilor Longo. You made the motion. You're the first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a nutshell, that's what they're saying. The City of Welland is basically saying that they think that their municipal council should decide who, and by the looks of it, should be on the NPCA, and that's a member of the public, they're saying. Mm-hmm. You know as well as the rest of the council knows that that's been the policy, well, not really a policy, but the way that the City of Thorold's done it over the last number of years. Our mayor and regional councilor and city councilors step aside and let a member of the public with the right qualifications do the job. And I believe that's what we should support here. My only concern is I'm not sure if a municipality has the right to do this. This may be a regional bylaw that has to be followed from their perspective, but I would hope that they listen to our municipality and other municipalities and do what I consider is the right thing and allow a municipality to decide who's on the board. And somebody on that board should be somebody with a conservation background, maybe a financial background, a well-rounded individual who's supporting what the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority should be supporting.
Good. I have Councilor Whalen. Anybody else? Pion. Councilor Whalen? Or Hanley? I'm sorry, Tim. Same heads.
Hey, get the same. I use these head and shoulders, not use mountain well.
Sorry, it's been a long day for me. I've been out going since early this morning.
You want me, guy? My concern is not the NPCA self-governed. Whatever we say basically doesn't matter. In an essence, they do what they want. We got no authority over them. So no matter who we put in there, regardless of the point, when they get their executive committee in there, like it's been happening, and you can see all the concerns that every political party in the region of Niagara has had in regards to the MPCA lately, they're self-governed, are they, basically? So to me, it's like, I support, Councillor Longo saying that it should be a member of the public, but at the end of the day, regardless of what we want, they're going to decide themselves.
Councillor Pionk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hanley makes a good point, but it is an improvement overall if we do this. And the reason why is because overall they're self-governed, I agree. But the members of the committee can be seen as advisors to the ones who make the decisions. And right now, it's lopsided because we have people on there who frankly aren't qualified to give them the appropriate advice. At least if we can get a group of people in there from the general public who have the expertise to look at the technical reports, sure, internally they can still say, no, we're going to do this, but then at least it becomes more difficult to do it. And publicly, it's seen that they are going against the advice of their own experts. And so at least that makes for a better overall process. I think it's a great idea to do this. Right now, first dibs goes to regional councillors. If there's positions open after the regional councillors have a first go, then my understanding is that municipalities can put a municipal councillor, and then only then can we appoint someone from the public. And that has led to the current system where Thorold is the only municipality of the 12, to my understanding, that has a member of the public who serves on there. Everyone else is from the region. These are technical reports they have to pour through. As Councillor Longo said, someone with a background in conservation, in biology, in water chemistry, in pollution. Just to say regional councillors can go on, sure, if we happen to have a regional councillor who might have that expertise, then they can put their name forward. But I think it should be by merit and by credentials that people should be appointed to that committee, because they look through very technical reports, and if you don't have the training and background in that, then it's just a flawed process.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I'll call the question on Councillor Longo's motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. City of St. Catharines, long-term care facilities increased funding. And referred by Councillor Longo. No? Oh, Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Neal, that the correspondence received from the City of St. Catharines from its council meeting of January 29th, 2018, calling on the Government of Ontario to ensure long-term care facilities in St. Catharines and Niagara receive the necessary funding to implement 4 hours of direct care per resident per day at the earliest opportunity be received and supported.
Speakers to the motion. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're into statements by councillors. And I have, I'll start with everybody. Hang on. I'll start over this side. Councillor Ugolini, Councillor Neal, Councillor Whalen. I'll go over here. All three of you, everybody.
Just do the round.
Go ahead, Councillor Ugolini.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, I got one issue, and it's regarding the increased problem with rat infestation throughout the region. I would like to ask for a staff report that our staff, in conjunction with area municipalities, particularly St. Catharines and Niagara Falls, along with public health at the region, to develop a comprehensive plan to deal with the increasing problem of rat infestation, not only in Thorold, but throughout the region. And just to comment on that, public health has taken an approach that they don't get involved any longer unless it's an internal problem in a building, not external. The biggest problem we're having is external. And St. Catharines and Niagara Falls have asked staff to initiate plans, and they're moving very strong on this issue. Niagara Falls got a terrible issue, St. Catharines, and believe me, we have the same problem here. So it's an issue. I think if we all work together, we can work to address it, because I don't know if you have, but I've had calls where people are sitting on their back patio and rats are scurrying across, and that's not a condition we want to see in our city.
Thank you, Councilor Ugolini. Speakers to that. Oh, go ahead, Councilor Hanley.
Councilor Ugolini makes a great point. In fact, the city of Niagara Falls has already implemented that if they send out an inspector to your property and it's determined that you do have a rat infestation, you're going to get a $200 grant to help you expedite the process and eliminate an infestation. If I downloaded you the pictures I got from my own property, and believe me, I think last year was 17 of them I caught in my property. I got 3 rat traps going because we've had the rain and the snow. The other day I could actually see the trail. They're rampant everywhere, and there's no doubt about it. I hate to say, we're all recyclers, but since composting come into effect and people having outdoor composting, as far as I'm concerned, I've eliminated mine. I'm not having it. That's an attractant to them, to the backyard composting. And unfortunately, we've created a problem ourselves. I honestly believe that it only takes a matter of time where the breeding population, I don't know if councillors have ever looked into it. If you look into it and you get, I think it's 6 female rats and 6 male rats, and they start breeding, at the end of 1 year, you would have 64,000 rats alone, just from them, because it only takes 21 days for a gestation period. And how rats breed is they basically have a mother rat there, and she don't go nowhere. The other rats come and feed her, and she just keeps breeding. And we're going to continue to have that problem. If council remembers, we had the problem downtown. We got the city to rectify it by some of our own buildings, where I brought pictures of this council right near Tim Horton Donuts, our own downtown core, this big. So it is a rampant problem, and I agree with Councilor Ugolini. We need to address it. We need to get the region more proactive. That's why we pay taxes. I know they bait sewers and whatnot, but if they're going to take that type of attitude and then bore it onto the taxpayer, then we as taxpayers, I'll tell you, I'm going to stop like I already have. I don't compost. I don't keep a green bin around my house. I'll be honest with you. I compost plastics and paper products. Other than that, there's no green bin in my house. Why? Because since I started doing it some years ago, it created a rat infestation around my property, and it continues to this day. So we need the region to be proactive in this, and we need to do something as a council to get them more involved, because they're, again, just downloading the situation on us, where they've created the problem, I believe, in an essence, or partially, because wanting area municipalities to compost more, and by doing so, we've created a nuisance ourselves, and now we need to start addressing it. So that's my comment on it.
Any more speakers to Councilor Ugolini's motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I have Councilor Neal.
Mr. Mayor, a situation has been brought to my attention on Friday. I got a email from Doug Applegate, who's a very respected seniors advocate, and a seniors residence is named after him.
Yeah,
and he gave me an email regarding the province of Ontario freeing up 5,000 new long-term care beds. And I believe we need to act on this as soon as possible, because I think we have to take the initiative in our hands, and along with cooperating with the regional government, to go forward and look at getting a long-term care facility in Thorold, which we have been working on for a couple of months now. So I have a motion before me regarding that, moved by myself, second by Councilor Ugolini, that the mayor send a letter to the region asking to have the necessary number of new beds to establish a long-term care facility in Thorold from the 5,000 new long-term care beds announced by the province, and that the city meet with the region as soon as possible.
So you're saying you want to know what the allotment is to the region?
I want to get our piece of the pie.
The region's allotment?
Yes. And I'm
Okay.
asking that you send a letter and sitting down with the region regarding, I'd like to be part of it, but sitting down.
Well, that goes to
with
the health department again, I believe, or housing board.
Correct.
It would go to the housing board. long-term? Community services. Okay, that's community services.
So that's the motion, Mr. Mayor.
The motion's on the floor. Speakers to that motion, Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great initiative. I think it's a great idea, being that we're the only municipality in Niagara that does not have a long-term care facility. Can we expand this a little bit further and get some support from our upper levels of government also? I don't know whether this is provincially mandated or federally, but can we ask for an amendment there?
It's a provincial program, so you want to talk to, we want to send the same letter to our representative, Cindy
Yes, please.
Forster.
A
Right?
little bit more support from the province.
Okay, Councillor Ugolini, same subject?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I remember 2 years ago in AMO, we had that meeting, and we talked about long-term care, and yourself and Councillor Whalen and myself sat in on that meeting. So it's a good time with this that we can bring that forward again and do our best to see if we can get something for Thorold.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll vote on this one, then we can bring the second one up. Any other speakers to Councillor Neal's motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Neal, you have another one.
No, that's fine.
Councillor Neal, were you going to bring up about the DQ Gun Club in the petition?
That was a notice of motion.
Okay, sorry.
Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on a happier note, just to let everybody know that the Thorold Sports Runway Recognition Dinner on March the 27th. Tickets are going great. We're almost up to where we were last year with 5 weeks left to go. So if anyone's got any intentions on getting a ticket, probably better to act fast while they're still available.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few weeks ago, I mentioned I'd be bringing a motion forward regarding transit. I'm still waiting for information from staff. They're working with the appropriate parties to get it for me. So I'll be withdrawing that notice of motion for now and bringing it back at a later date. And hopefully sooner.
Maybe you want to use the term defer.
Defer.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll defer that notice of motion.
Withdraw.
Withdrawn, that's what.
We're arguing here, and she says withdraw.
I will
so
withdraw it for today and I'll bring it back
She's right.
in the near future. Thank you.
Councillor Hanley.
I have a few items that I've asked to speak about. First one is in regards to the legislation of marijuana. I bring it up in regards to, I was the councillor, we went to AMO in August, and I sat in on the symposium, the information session. I know that we've had one in the city, and anybody that was there would know the biggest concern of individuals was where they're going to be able to get the product. That was actually the biggest concern. We know that the city of Niagara Falls, the cities of Toronto are applying to have marijuana cafes. And I know from dealing with adult entertainment parlors some years ago that you cannot ban a business once one's allowed to establish themselves in the municipality. They have to give every municipality in Ontario that opportunity, and we can only regulate them. We can't ban them. So I know, and I'm wanting to know, because being there, that there has to be appropriate signage, and my concern is that I've been confronted by individuals in this municipality who want to open up a marijuana cafe. And knowing that it may be just delayed as of January 1st, but it's coming, we as a council and we as a municipality, I think, need to try to get some type of motion going forward so when it does come to fruition, that we're prepared to deal with it, because I don't think ourselves and most municipalities in Ontario are not prepared to deal with it, right? And it's coming to be. But if the Ontario government allows Niagara Falls to set up a marijuana cafe, we as a municipality in Thorold is going to have to allow the same, because then it's going to be regulated and it won't be banned. What have we been doing? I know nothing. I know going to Ottawa, they gave suggestions like in regards to signage. Have we done any process in that? You know, it has to be that it can't be identifiable to a person under the 18 years of old, that if they walk by that facade of that business, it can't be identifiable that there's actually marijuana behind that facade. What have we been doing as a municipality? I would ask, or what are the steps that this city is going to take forward, or are we in any type of process to dealing with the legislation of marijuana once it does come to fruition. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, I think we need to be proactive because the way it works is that once someone applies for a license, if we haven't already put the rules in place, you cannot backtrack and change legislations to ban someone from doing so. It's been proven in the municipality of Pelham, where they tried to change the zoning bylaw midstream. The gentleman sued the municipality of Pelham, and he won. So we need to get our ducks in a row. That's what I'm saying as a counselor, so we don't get ourselves in a predicament where we have someone, as adult entertainment parlors, we can regulate it and designate it, where it's going to be, where they're going to operate. And I do believe as a council, we need to be proactive and protect ourselves in a way so that we can keep it out of areas in which we don't want it to be part of our economy or our community. So before legislation does come into effect, I ask Mr. Mayor, or through the appropriate staff member, that we start doing our due diligence so that when the time does come, we got all our ducks in a row. And I know as a councillor, we've never discussed it yet. But before we know it, the day that it's going to be legislated is going to be soon upon us. And I'm just asking that council through you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will take the legal opinion on that and be prepared for, it's coming, we know that. So I know the questions will be asked, so we will contact our legal staff and then get the recommendation.
Maybe even if I could as a council, maybe put a motion forward that we have a little meeting ourselves, wherever, with legal staff or however it may be worded, that we need to sit down as a council and we need to have someone in our legal team to come to us as councillors and explain to us what we're facing or may be facing and what we can do as a municipality.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I think what we can actually do is, if we can allow a regional or a legal person to come in here and do a presentation to council and bring them up to speed, what we cannot do as a starting point, even before the report is put together, so that everyone hears at the same time from this legal individual here at the council.
Okay, do I need to put a motion forward asking for that, or as a direction of staff? So I can see down, we're all good. Okay, thank you very much. Second concern I wanted to bring up, I had mentioned and asked permission to talk about in regards to our regional councillor, Henry D'Angela, coming to our meetings and making presentations, and I see, knowing that I was put on the agenda to talk about such. But my concern is that I do not agree with having an agenda item on our council agenda 4.0 where it's a regional council update, where in the past he would have to put his name down as a delegate at council. And my concern is this, is that 2018 is an election year, and I've gone through our regional council's attendance record, and his average attendance in the last 3 years, and prior to that, in the last 7 years, is 2.3 meetings a year. I've gone through every council meeting. But yet, it seemed, I wanted to ask him tonight, I was hoping he'd come, because I wanted to ask him what deemed it necessary that you need to start attending every council meeting now. Because me personally, I believe he's using the platform that we provide to him to be electioneering, politicianing, Mr. Mayor. And I'm out of order. So let me say this here then. My question to him would have been, my concern is this. I don't believe that we should have a separate agenda for the regional council to speak, and my reasoning being is this. His first attendance while this term of council sits was on March 17, 2015, where he came and made a regional budget presentation. He never appeared again before a council meeting until July the 14th, 2015, where he came to do a regional council update. 7 months later, on February the 16th, 2016, he then appeared before council to make a regional budget update. 3 months later, in May 17, 2016, he came and gave us an update in regards to regional issues. 7 months later, on December 20th, 2016, he appeared again to give us an update on the MPCA regional budget and the summer games. A 4 months absent, and he appeared again on April the 4th, 2017. He then never appeared again until December the 19th, 2017. He's been to every council meeting since. That was an 8.5-month absence with no regional representative, and I wish he would have come tonight, because I wanted to ask him what deemed it necessary.
Counselor?
That in 2018.
Our clerk can answer all your questions right now.
I know that was
what your dialogue is, I don't even know if it's in order, but.
Well, I've checked it, Mr. Mayor. We've gone through I knew you were going to say this, and I'm telling you something right now. I've gone through our procedure bylaws.
Our clerk will give you
I'm
an
allowed to mention
explanation.
how many meetings he attended. I can do that. I'm not out of order. If I cannot sit here as a counselor and state what council meetings I okay, through the clerk, do I not have the right to question how many meetings the regional councils attended in the city of Thorold?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanley, yes, that information is public information. You can state it.
Okay, that's all I'm doing.
But can I also answer your question?
Yes.
It was not our regional councillor who requested to have a standing item on the agenda. It was myself that put him on there after doing my research as to what other area municipalities do across the region. And 5 of them do offer a standing item for their regional councillor. And I took it upon myself to think, you know what, this is a good idea to have him. It increases accountability and transparency. And, you know, not unlike our local councillors, our regional councillors are elected as well. And I think the residents should have a right to know what is going on at the region. So I didn't see an issue with giving him the opportunity to do so. And it had nothing to do with election. It just happened to be that we brought forward a new procedure bylaw January 1st, 2018.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because my concern is just that. Why was it that you had to bring a motion forward to allow him to come and speak every council meeting when he had that opportunity for the last 7 years to do so, and he never exercised that right? That's my concern. So I'll end that one then. That's been my concern though, and I make a great point. Even though you and Mr. Delvecchio, I give you all the credit in the world for doing that, because I know you've been streamlining our council meetings, and I appreciate you for doing that. And if that's what other municipalities have been doing, I appreciate it. But I don't think it should have taken you or other municipalities to show that type of atmosphere. If he was as responsible, I feel, as a regional, and I hope he was here, I would expect that I would come to every meeting regardless whether or not you as a city clerk deemed it necessary or because of other municipalities or what they were doing. And that's always asking, because his average attendance is 2.3 meetings the last 7 years. Lastly, I wanted to speak about in regards to staffing, in regards to the city and our regular employee seniority list. And I've just been going through some records, and I'll do this quick. I've talked to our director of operations, George, in regards to it, but I found it, the amount of employees, we just passed the budget, and you've seen how many other employees that we're adding in regards to this city. And councilors, where I'm getting at is this, is in 2008, some of you may not be aware, but we had a total of 49 regular employees on our senior seniority list. 35 in operations, 6 in finance, 3 in clerks, 1 in building, 1 in fire department, 1 in planning, 1 in bylaw, 1 in clerks finance, 2 casual, and 2 clerical reliefs. We had 17 maintenance employees and what they call maintenance 2, just to make you aware. And we had 4 drivers. 11 years later, we've increased our staff inside planning, building, every department. But yet, our regular employee seniority list, our core employees, we are now down to 48 employees. We've actually gone down. In 2008, we had 53 employees. In 2018, we have 51, our outside workers. Since then, Rolling Metals, Merit Division, in the last 11 years, the West Subdivision, the amount of roadways and the amount of work that we've put on the backs of our workers in regards to that has been tenfold. And see, what the one number that I look at is that in 2008, we had 1 person in the building department. In 2018, we have 4. We had 1 in bylaw. Then in 2008 and in 2018, we have 3. So that shows me that by increasing to 4 in the building and 3 in the bylaw, our municipality must be growing because we have more building permits to do, more property to take care of, to do housing and bylaw enforcement and clean yard bylaws. Just making you aware that I'm going to bring motions forward in the near future that we complement that. Because I can see no reason why in 2008, where we have 17 maintenance employees at level 2 and 4 drivers, and 11 years later, we only have 16 and 4 drivers, have never increased our complement, and we know what's happening in Port Robinson West. Rolling Meadows, West Subdivision, Richmond Street, the old school. What happened behind Gale's gas station? The Exelon. How is it that we can increase our complement in regards to addressing those issues, but yet the people that are in the public's eyes and the ones that we depend on as counselors to be out there, know how we alleviate all those phone calls we get? We change the way the complement is. Because if we had been operating and increased the percentages of employees in our regular employee seniority list as we had in the rest of our departments in the city of Thorold, it would be far more. The fact of the matter is, and I'm going to give George some statistics, that in 2009 we actually had 56. And today, in 2018, we've reduced that number to 51. So I'm going to bring that forward to council. I've been doing some homework, and I've gone through from 2008 all the way to 2018. I got 2009. But to me, when I see a municipality growing the way we are, and I see the pressure coming from the other end, in the next year, as a councillor, I'm going to address these issues, and I hope that the majority of councillors support me in my initiative that we need to take care of all aspects of our city, because in order to alleviate the complaints we get from our local residents, we need to address the issues as to why we might be getting those complaints. And that's including all the new positions that we hired for my 2018 list, right up until our budget meeting previously.
Councillor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to bring up the issue of the beautification fund for the Darlene Ryan Community Center in Port Robinson. Through you to our Director of Finance, how long would it take to do this properly and set up such a fund?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do understand that they have submitted some funding, so we will create the line item for this evening. However, they also have been provided with a copy of Council's fundraising policy, and it establishes the rules and the requirements for creation of such a fundraising policy. Council basically has to approve the policy, so they're free to give me a call. Normally what happens is they provide their requirements, they give it to staff. Staff then brings a report forward, and the fundraising plan gets formally approved by council, so that when these fundraising events do go forward, that the general population does know that it is for a city-sanctioned fundraising event or fundraising project.
Okay, so if we were to direct staff to work with the people at the Darlene Ryan Community Center, you could work with them to get together the appropriate papers to do this?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, I can provide them with a copy of the policy again. I understand the clerk has already done so, but I can give them a copy of the policy again. They can go through and fulfill the requirements, submit it to staff, and we can bring it forward to council.
Okay, and then it just comes forward to council, and then we can approve it, and the fund will then be established. How long
That's
would such
correct.
a process take, just to get an idea of a time?
Well, it's up to them. It won't take staff long to, unless there's gaps in the information that's been provided or anything that's contentious. It won't take long for staff to bring it forward to council. It really, the onus is on them to get the plan submitted.
Okay, so they just need to fill out the forms?
There's no forms.
Not forms, but
no.
provide the appropriate information.
They have to
then-
provide the appropriate information.
Okay, then, if I could then make a motion to direct staff to do this, is a motion needed, or can I just, okay, great, we don't even need a motion, even better. So we can just direct staff to go ahead and
Just give staff direction.
just give a direction to staff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, the direction has to
No,
go to
I
the
guess what I'm
group
saying is refer it to staff.
submit the requirements, and then staff, at the time that we receive it, we will bring a report forward for council endorsement.
Yeah, sorry, I used the wrong terminology. Refer it to staff so that they can wait for the appropriate information from the people at Darlene Ryan. And as soon as that information comes, then we can get a report and approve it, hopefully approve it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we're out of statements by councilors. Notice of motions. Councilor Neil.
Mr. Mayor, I have a few notice of motions. The first one has to deal with the DQ Gun Club. I think everybody knows on Cataract Road, there is a gun club. And the people around the gun club have got a petition together, and I won't bother reading out the issue that they have stated in this. What I would like to do is do a notice of, or bring a motion forward at the next council meeting to deal with this issue. It's a very difficult issue, from what I understand from the people that have done whatever you call it, have had their problems been divided all over the place out there. And so I'm going to bring forward a motion at the next meeting regarding that. Is that the way to do it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can we get a few more details? What are the issues?
The issues are increased use of guns out there, increased noise. They have put more pieces of equipment and buildings out there that I don't think they have gotten a building permit for. Those are some of the items that are being done out there to the detriment of the people that live around there.
Okay, Councillor, just a little advice. You and I should sit down and talk about this also in the near future. This was a big issue at the region 3 to 4 years ago. And,
Getting worse.
well, nothing was resolved then, and it's, you have to talk to me, okay?
Okay, so that's the first notice of motion. Second notice of motion regarding the long-term care facility. In Doug Rappleja's letter, and I've given a copy to everybody on council, and he agrees with going to the region regarding what we've done, but also to look at it ourselves, because Welland did the same thing. They went themselves, and our age-friendly committee would be a perfect place to put it. To start with is to do a proposal from the city's perspective on the long-term care beds, because there are private companies out there that also are going to vie for the 5,000 beds, not just the region itself. And I believe that we need to look at it a little bit more in depth regarding it, and Doug Rappleche would love to come down and talk to us about it, on how Welland proceeded and obtain the 75 beds that they were able to get through the city of Welland, not the region. So that's a notice of motion also, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good one. Thank you, Councillor.
The next one I have, and this is a long-term situation, is that we have a train track going up and down beside our canal. And I understand that part of the tracks in the city of Thorold itself are going to be taken out. And I hope that the regular track along the canal is not going to be taken out, because what I would like to see happen in 5 or 6 years is that the city of Thorold, the city of Welland, and the town of Port Colborne get together and have the GO train come down south instead of just going into Niagara Falls. Because Grow South was a regional concept, and it still is as far as I know. And I think that we have to start the ball rolling regarding putting it in the Metro's view mirror in order for it to happen 5 or 6 years from now. It's not going to happen in our term or maybe the next term, but I think we have to start the ball rolling. We have to put it through the region maybe for that to happen. So that the notice of motion will be brought forward at the next meeting regarding that.
Just to let you know that with the tracks that are coming out are is Pine Street. We're talking that the ones they're going to take them out, and I think we repair the road.
Yeah, and I believe the tracks all the way over to the tracks that I was just mentioning are being taken out also.
All the way to the chemical factory.
So maybe I could have staff just send a letter to the Thorold Nonprofit Housing that that's going to happen, so that we can deal with it over there too.
Well, you're on that committee.
Yeah, I know, but I'd like an official document
Yeah.
sent over to them so that I'm not just saying
Yeah,
that that's
yeah.
what's going to happen. The last item, and I had mentioned this a while ago, and that's a downtown student hub, whatever that means. We're going to have more students coming downtown. We have other buildings that are being built and more students that are coming down to downtown Thorold. And I think we need a hub where they can go and research the projects, sit around, do their homework in a nice setting, whether it be the library or some other building downtown. But I think we have to take a look at Brock University coming down and putting some sort of entity there for the students that are in our particular downtown area. So I would bring in a motion forward for that purpose too.
Study center complete with Wi-Fi.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. Okay, any other notices of motions? Counselor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to let council be known that it's my intention to bring a notice of motion forward in regards to a bylaw amendment for hobby vehicles in residential areas.
Hobby vehicle.
Hobby vehicles. We don't have it. I've been doing a little investigating. We have a little issue in town here. You know, we have a racetrack nearby, and even though they're not licensed vehicles, unless it's on a trailer, they've been fined substantially for having such vehicles. And I'm gonna discuss it more and further. I know I can't do it right now because I'm not allowed to elaborate, but it's in regards to a parking amendment in relation to hobby vehicles. Not motor homes, not having a
You're gonna
stock
have
car.
to, when you talk to staff, you're gonna have to elaborate a little bit more with regards to that.
Well, I'll elaborate a little bit more. We have a racetrack in the city of Thorold, Maryville Speedway, been here for 67 years.
Work with the
Yeah.
council, or
Yeah.
our staff on it.
Okay,
I would ask you to do that.
that's what it's relations to.
Okay.
It's, if I can just elaborate a little bit, I've done some research. Other municipalities within the Niagara region have a bylaw that allows for hobby vehicles to be parked in residential areas.
Okay. Thank you. Annie, go ahead, Councilor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, but items like that, shouldn't those be staff reports, not notices of motion? Like, we're lining up a lot of this stuff on notice of motion, I don't think that's where they belong. Just, I think that sometimes we need a staff report, or we need consultation between Councilor Hanley and bylaw to look at something, but I don't know why we're bringing all these things as notices of motion, just my personal opinion.
I can tell you,
I agree with you.
it's a notice of motion because there's already been a bylaw that we as council has passed. And in order to change that bylaw, an amendment has to be put forward. Only if it was a new bylaw that council had never addressed before, then you wouldn't need a notice of bylaw or a notice of motion brought forward. I, as an individual, as a councillor, cannot go and have them change a bylaw that's already in place unless I bring a motion forward to council and get the support of the majority of council in order for that bylaw to be amended. And that's procedural bylaw. That's the way it's got to be done. Because if I could change a bylaw myself, I'll just go to the clerk's department and get them to change it, and then we'll resolve this issue once and for all. I got about 1,000 of them I could change then. It's got to be done through procedural bylaws.
But the way we've done it in the...
Go ahead.
The way we've done it in the past is, we've asked for a staff report, the staff report comes back with a recommendation, and then we pass the recommendation and they change the bylaw. So, I'm just saying that format, to me...
That's going to happen in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, so like, you know, but the staff report comes first, and then we look at the recommendation, they say, yes, Councillor Hanley brought up a good point, we should look at doing this, and then we pass that, and that gets passed, and then it comes back as a bylaw to the next meeting. I just think we're getting a little outside the boundaries here. My own.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, before we resolve into general committee, let's take a 5-minute break.
This is going on.
in line for 2 hours at the funeral today. 2 hours, they stood in line at Buckenfusel's.
I went right at quarter to two.
Yeah, you're lucky.
early too, I got there.
Fred was just ahead.
I got there at 3 o'clock. I left at 5.
Was Mr. Jones still there?
No.
He was there when we went, but he was in a
Yeah, I could imagine. No, he wasn't there at 5 o'clock. staff, are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we have no delegations. I'll call for reports to be brought forward by for consent.
Sorry, everybody hear me? Okay. Okay. I'll call for reports to be brought forward from consent. Are there any consent items? Does anybody have anything involved? Go ahead, Councilor, which one?
I believe there's a delegation here for 7F. I believe that's where most of the people are here.
There's no delegation.
Which one? 7F?
Yeah, but we're on 6.
Well, we're moving all
Oh, yeah.
as a block.
We're just,
When you're talking consent ones?
okay, I'm sorry, thank you. Okay.
Neil has his hand up. Has his hand up.
Councilor Neal.
Okay,
Yeah, just see, just a question regarding that, and it's just, we're renaming a street. Are there any, houses on the street?
that's not.
Rolling Meadows subdivision street renaming, I don't mind it being renamed, but are there any houses on the street already?
No. That's actually why we brought it forward.
That's great, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other reports to be pulled? Seeing none, I'll call a question on all the consent items. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Consent. Okay, we'll move into discussion reports. And first one is PWCS 2018-04. Restricted parking on Fox Grape Road, Juneberry Road, White Ash Road, and Shellback Road. Mr. Stovanovich.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the report is recommending that council accept report to PWCS 2018-04 for information purposes, and that concludes the report.
Thank you. Okay, move for the report, Councilor Ugolini.
So move the report. I want to speak to the report.
Sure, by all means, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding this, and there's nothing in the whole report, what I'd like to see is that emergency services go down that road when cars are parked on both sides of the street, not when just during the day when there's no cars. I want an emergency services report when there's cars on both sides of the street, because that, to me, is the biggest issue on whether we can safely have emergency services in that area when cars are parked on both sides of the street. So I'd like to have that report and then make a decision on this whole report.
So you're asking to defer this report?
I'm asking to defer the report. Well, I want to get a more thorough report back on, because there's nothing here addressing emergency services. Okay, so I'm asking to send it back to get a report on emergency services.
George, go ahead, George. Or Mr.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Item 1, I believe there was a discussion and dialogue with fire. There may be an omission in terms of the content for the report, and some of that information could be brought forward this evening if you so wish. Secondly, it is a recent new subdivision, and through that plan of subdivision, through the approvals process, our fire department would have commented on whether parking would inhibit emergency vehicle access through those named roads. If that was a concern, that would have been flagged, and it would have been restricted through the planning process. But with regard to the fire emergency services comment, maybe Mr. Dunsmore can speak to that.
Okay, I have Councilor Pion and Councilor... Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Dunsmore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when this whole thing was asked for by Councilor Longo, we absolutely did have the fire services go out there and drive the thing. and we don't believe that there's any issue whatsoever.
No issues. Counselor, you okay with that?
My problem is that we can drive that street, but I know because I've driven it, when there's cars on both sides of that street, and if that day they can go down and there's no cars on both sides, it's totally a different situation.
Okay, I have Counselor Payne and Counselor Longo to speak to that same motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak directly to that. As I see it, we're being asked simply to accept this for information. We're not being asked to approve it tonight, so we are getting another report. I think maybe if you want to direct to include some specific information such as you're asking, that's fine, but we don't need to debate whether or not we're not deferring a decision, we're simply accepting this for information purposes, so a report is coming for our final decision, so.
But that's what I asked. I asked
Right.
that we just get a detailed report on the
Right. So I think any one of us could ask for that kind of thing, and if we do that, we don't need to debate it, though, because a report is coming.
Okay, I have Counselor Longo to speak on the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quick. In that report, I guess, I'd like to see if, tomorrow would be a great day to drive a emergency vehicle and a plow down that road because all the snow is gone, but I'd like to know the thought of our plow drivers also, how they can maneuver on that street when we have snow events, because it's impossible. I've had plow drivers tell me that. It's next to impossible, and I don't know how a fire truck could get down that street with any speed when we have snow piled up on both sides and cars infringing on the center of the road. This is why I brought forward my suggestion that these new development needs to be looked at. So hopefully in that report, we can look at not only the best case scenario, but the worst case scenario in terms of parking. I believe there's every house on those streets has a garage and a driveway. I believe that should be ample parking for the neighborhood. And there's other streets such as Juneberry that have the entire stretch that have no parking along Highway 58. So I think there's more than enough. But again, I'll wait for the report from Operations and Emergency Services.
Counselor Longo, you've just talked. Are there any other speakers on this issue, on this report? You had your hand up, Counselor Whalen?
Thanks, Mayor. Same comment as Councilor Longo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are they adding a second recommendation then, that if our further staff report be prepared?
This is approved. The information report is approved. They have to bring another report.
Yeah.
But where's the direction to do that? Do you need a recommendation?
Okay, sure.
You want to speak to that?
Sure. So Councilor Ugolini, since you moved the report, are you open to an amendment that staff provide a further staff report with regard to emergency vehicles and, I guess, snowplow events in that area?
I'll call that a friendly amendment?
Yes, that's friendly.
Okay. Okay, that's what's on the floor. That's a motion on the floor. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWC 2018-09, parking modification in the downtown core. Huh? Oh, I missed one. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. PWC S 2018-05, Richmond Street and Ormond Street bicycle lanes. Mr. Stojanovich, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a lengthy one, so bear with me. The recommendation of the report is that council approve the removal of on-street parking on Richmond Street from Ormond Street South to Pine Street South and Ormond Street South from Linden Street to Richmond Street. And further, that council approve the implementation of bicycle lanes accompanied by the appropriate signage on Richmond Street from Ormond Street South to Pine Street South and on Ormond Street South from Richmond Street to Linden Street. And further, that council approve the addition of painted sharrows on Ormond Street South from Linden Street to St. David's Road to create a shared bicycle route on both sides of the road. And further, that the traffic and parking bylaw number 150-2012 be amended to restrict on-street parking on Richmond Street from Ormond Street South to Pine Street South and on Ormond Street South from Linden Street to Richmond Street. So concludes the report.
Thank you. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Whalen. Speakers to the report. Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that this is great. I think this is good active transportation step, and it's consistent with what we've done all through Richmond Street. And so this continuation now doesn't leave that gap which we were getting criticized for. So good work. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to this report? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWCS 2018-09, parking modifications in downtown core.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the recommendations of the report are that council approve the parking options for the downtown areas as described herein, and further that the appropriate bylaws be forwarded to council this evening for approval. So concludes the report.
Thank you. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Longo.
So move the report.
Speakers to the report. Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some great work. It's finally nice to see this coming to fruition. Just a question regarding the map. It doesn't go into detail about the on-street parking. It just has the one line, I believe, the red on Front Street. Can that be elaborated to show all the streets are inclusive, like Albert Street, I believe Carlton, Sullivan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Whalen, absolutely. So the intent here is that we're providing the information, and then for further information, we're directing the public and the BIA and the user groups to the website, to the Thorold.com website. So there is a lot more information that we have in regards to the strategy, including exactly which on-street roads parking would be permitted on. And it's fairly lengthy. What we wanted to do, just make sure that the message was clear, that there's plenty of on-street parking, there's plenty of permit parking, as well as daily parking lots that are available. And then as you needed to drill down further and get more information, that's where we're trying to direct folks to.
Sounds good. And just one more amendment. I wonder if we could extend that bylaw. The area on Front Street between Sullivan and the southerly dead end, right now there's no restriction with respect to overnight parking in that little area. So right now it's wide open for students, and they congregate there every night. So I was wondering if we can extend that no parking during the dead times at night. I believe it's between 3 and 7 in the morning.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunsmore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is included in this.
So the bylaw will include that. Perfect. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Whalen, we are having a public information center tomorrow from 2 to 4 and from 6 to 8. And there will be large format display boards as well that also shows clearly where the parking is available on street as well. So just want to add to that, yes, we are providing that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Neal.
I was just going to say the same thing, except where is it?
It's at the Frank Dorothy Arena. Thank you.
In the TAA room, yes.
Councillor Pion.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. By looking at how many lots are left that you have free parking in, there's lots 1, 3, and 4B that have no free parking, and that's by permit only. I realize we're going to be building more parking lots in the future, especially as we raise revenue from this. But in the meantime, are we not reducing the amount of parking for shoppers who want to go downtown? Because lots 1, 3, and 4, if it's by permit only, really now, they're currently parking there if they want to go shopping downtown, but now they can't, right? I just want a clarification on that.
Go ahead. Go ahead then, Terry.
We're actually increasing parking because we're driving the people that are there all day into the permit lots, freeing up places in the 2-hour and in the 2 other parking lots. If everything works according to plan, we will actually free spaces.
Okay, that's great, because I'm not a member of the parking committee, so I know there's probably been many, many hours of discussion on this. The other thing I saw in the minutes from the parking committee that I'm not sure, at least the minutes don't fully address this, is several people brought up the problem that there are quite a few employees downtown. And are they now going to need to buy permits to, because they're going to park more than 2 hours there, right? And I saw that in the minutes for the parking committee, but I don't think it was addressed. I mean, it may have been addressed during your discussions, but the minutes don't seem to have that. Can anybody clarify what an employee, because there's quite a few employees downtown that obviously are there for more than 2 hours.
Yeah.
So are they needing to buy permits, or how do they handle it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the employees has to buy parking permit as well. The store owners, the residents, and the employees who work in downtown, who are there for longer duration, they have to buy permits. The free parking on the street is for the patrons, for the customers who come to downtown. That's 2 hours free. Someone who wants to come in there for longer than 2 hours, there is a paid parking lot. After 2 hours, you have to pay for it. So the whole strategy is to make sure that the customers who are coming to downtown, they are free, because the whole downtown business is because of the customers. So don't charge any money from them. However, the store owners, the employees, and the residents who want to park, they have to buy a permit. Thank you.
Councilor Ugolini?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are some free areas down by the Book Depot. We have a free lot, a municipal lot across from Julie's Tire. We also, the stone parking lot in the old Public Works yard is still free until we get enough revenue to make that a fully effective paved lit parking lot. So
And
there
you have-
are options.
Then you have the arena.
And the arena. So there are options. It means they have to walk a couple of blocks, but there are free options as well.
Okay, and I take it we're going to implement this, which I think is great. It's the best progress I've seen to date. So, and we're going to be observing it carefully and possibly tweaking it to address exactly these kinds of issues. Okay, great.
Councilor Whalen?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can we have staff bring the presentation tomorrow to the BIA's general meeting on March the 7th also, just in case some of the people uptown can't get to the meeting tomorrow? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we can do that. And as I like to point it out, that Councillor Whelan and Councillor Ugolini was intricately involved in this process. And certainly through the parking committee, we have made a lot of progress. Compliments to staff as well, Mr. Dunsmore, that we could able to resolve the issue. What was the issue that the issues that were identified, and I'm hoping that once we roll it out, there may be some issues, some growing pains and all those things. So I just want everyone to bear with us. It's a good strategy, and let's give it a shot and then see how we progress. Thank you.
I have just a question for Mr. Dunsmore. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you told me it's going to be that the towpath parking lot is going to be done in 2 stages. Half gets done, the other half stays like it is. Once the first half is completed, you do the second half. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to commit to half and half. What I'm going to say is we're going to manage to keep as much parking open as possible during the time.
Well, good luck on that one.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll call the question on the original report. Are there any other speakers? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PDS 2018-03, Development Charges Rebate Program Funding, Ontario Fair Housing Plan. And that's Ms. Landry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff would like to add a third recommendation to the subject report for clarification purposes. The recommendations of the report are as follows. That Director of Planning and Development Services Report, PDS 2018-03, be approved as presented. That Council agrees to assign the Niagara Region as the administrator of the Development Charges Rebate Program, an initiative under the Ontario Fair Housing Plan, if the region/city is successful in their funding application. That council directs the Niagara region to submit the expression of interest application for the Development Charges Rebate Program to the Ministry of Housing on behalf of the city. This concludes the report.
Thank you very much. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Pion?
So moved.
Speakers to the report? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PDS 2018-04, recommendation report regarding a zoning bylaw amendment for 7 and 9 Ormond Street. File ZBA 10-2017.
The recommendations
Ms.
of...
Hannah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The recommendations of the report are that the Director of Planning and Development Services report, PDS 2018-04, be approved as presented. That General Committee direct planning staff to prepare the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the lands from Central Commercial CC Zone to a site-specific Central Commercial CC Zone, and that's referred to in Table 1. That the zoning bylaw amendment be approved by Council, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to Council at a future meeting. So concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Ugolini. Speakers to the report. Councillor Neal.
Just the parking part of it, Mr. Mayor, just to get clarification, so it's one parking spot per unit? Is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the applicant requested one parking space per unit. However, planning staff do not recommend that parking regulation. The parking regulation that planning staff recommend is a rate of 1.25 per unit.
Okay, my second question is regarding the boundary lane behind the unit that's being built. We're looking at another unit that's being built, one that's already being built, and it's a one-lane laneway. And it's a laneway is a laneway. It's not a road. And my question to you is, how are we going to approach that laneway? Because traffic is going to be more than that's going to be able to be used on that particular road. That road is not going to do it the way it is. How are we going to approach it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our engineering staff do not indicate any concerns with traffic volume or patterns with this proposed development. It is planning staff's understanding that as additional developments are brought forward for consideration, that engineering staff will be reviewing these applications and requiring traffic studies or additional work done at that time. But as of now, there are no concerns being raised by staff.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether to do it now, but I think we need to have a review of that laneway. I think it will be overextended once this project gets done, because there are two other projects that have just been, one is just about being completed, another one was just completed along that laneway. And Shannon Passero's post office has parking behind her place, and I know there's a number of other homes that back onto to Boundary Lane, or to Boundary Lane, and I don't think that we can subject that laneway, the way it's designed at the present moment, to the amount of traffic that's going to go up and down that.
Councillor Ugolini.
Mr. Mayor, I know that last year we made changes. That is all one way now. So you come in on MacArthur and you go out Boundary. So from my understanding, remembering what happened, because that happened when they built the new build that's being built now on Albert Street. That was the study they did to make sure that the traffic could go and that fire and emergency vehicles could get back there. And that was the recommendation that came, and we passed, and we changed that from both-way traffic to one-way so that the flow in and out is controlled, because you can't fit two vehicles safely by.
Mr. Mayor, that's not an improved roadway back there. That's just a laneway, and we need to deal with it. I think we need to improve it some way, so I think we need a report back on how we're going to improve that roadway.
It was the milk run back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and there has never been any real improvement on that road since. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. If you approach off of Front Street Once you go down that alley, just by where Rose Argentino's property used to be, there's a sign on the pole that says one way. But only from there down, the whole laneway isn't one way. So you can actually come in from Front Street and have access to that new building that is being built right now where the old watchsmith used to be, Bob Mills, and that's two-way. That's not one-way, because if you look at it, you come in that alley, and it only tells you as you go around the bend and head towards Tim Horton Donuts, that that's now one-way. The other way is two-way. So you can come in off Front Street, park at Shannon Passerio's, and go back out and approach Front Street again. So it's not totally one-way, and I do believe with Councillor Neal that it's not really improved road, and we need to look at it. If I could have one other question is it, if through you to the appropriate staff member, is it not that there's supposed to be 1.5 spaces per unit, and if we're going to 1.25 spaces per unit, are we in turn taking cash in lieu for the other 0.25 that's not being looked at here?
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, in regards to the laneway, the details of the laneway can be something that staff explore further. At the site plan stage, there is that opportunity for further refinement to be done to the plan. The zoning bylaw itself, in terms of the amendment, does not have anything specific in terms of the traffic patterns or the ingress-egress from the site itself. So that is something that can be dealt with at site plan. In terms of the parking spaces, there are several different regulations that are applicable in the zoning bylaw depending on the type of use as well as the number of units. So firstly, as I mentioned before, the applicant did request a reduction to one space per unit. The application that was presented to planning staff and brought forward at the public meeting was for an 18-unit apartment building. For that number of units, the parking regulation for apartment dwellings is 1.25. It was recognized by planning staff that the parking needs for the development weren't going to be met, which would result in potentially negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood and community. Planning staff then looked at what the parking needs were that could be accommodated on site. And currently there are 18 parking spaces provided. Planning staff did a review of similar parking regulations in other area municipalities in Niagara, and it was recognized that the parking regulations in Thorold are unique in the sense that there are two parking regulations for apartment buildings. Typically in municipalities there would just be one parking regulation for the use. So for instance, either 1.5 for an apartment unit or 1.25 for an apartment unit. In this case, Thorold, for whatever reason, has two parking regulations. So in effect, if the number of units in a building is decreased, the parking regulation is in fact increased, as opposed to if the number of units is increased, the parking regulation is increased. So it is, in a sense, opposite of what you might expect, and it's also not the norm of what is practiced in planning. So after review of both the site and a review of standard practices throughout other municipalities and zoning bylaws in Niagara, planning staff are of the opinion that the 1.25 parking regulation is sufficient for the site, and that there will be no negative impact onto the surrounding neighborhood because the number of units will have to be decreased to meet the parking regulation that is being put forward as a recommendation by planning staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing. So then actually, then we have the opportunity as staff, if I hear you correctly, we can decide whether it's not 1.25 or 1.5 because we have two sets of laws or bylaws in place?
No, the recommendation of staff is that the regulation for this site, that would be a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment, would be for 1.25. Currently, the zoning bylaw has two zoning regulations for parking based on the number of dwelling units in the apartment building itself. The recommendation of staff is that there be one parking regulation applied to the entire site.
Thank you. I'm kind of confused in the sense that it's almost like we need to maybe, as a council, get one set of rules in place and make it streamlined across the board, but thank you very much.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, that is the intent of planning staff to do in our upcoming zoning bylaw. And the recommendation that's before you tonight is a recognition of the work that planning staff has done. And based on our professional opinion, we agree that there should be one regulation for parking for apartment buildings, and we put forward that the 1.25 is appropriate.
Good, because I know we're willing to deal with the comprehensive zoning bylaw in regards to other issues we have in the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Longo, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some clarification here. The proponent was looking at 18 units originally, and what has happened here is staff has come back and determined that based on the parking, this will only be 14 units?
Right.
Okay. So based on the 14 units, that's how we get the 18 parking spots. You had mentioned that in the site plan, we could look at the traffic flow for boundary lane. So can you explain how that would work? If there's a deficiency, what would happen?
So in terms of the parking requirement, it would not change. What could potentially change would be the location of the the ramp into the parking garage. Currently, there is the proposal put forward to have the access off boundary lane. There is the potential that if a traffic study was to show that there was negative impact, that the site plan that is submitted could have the ramp be off of the main street itself. And that would be something that could be addressed at site plan stage.
Okay, so basically if we approve this as is and engineering comes back with a traffic study and says it's required to come off of Ormond Street, then that would be agreeable by the proponent?
We haven't spoken to the proponent on that. I would expect that they would be agreeable to that because it would be based on sound engineering practices, and it would be something that planning staff would support based on the recommendations of a traffic study.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Whalen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess we have to keep in mind also, coming in off Ormond Street, we just put a new crosswalk there with the seniors' residence across the street. It'd be kind of crazy going out on Ormond Street. That's another thing we have to keep in mind, though.
That is correct through you, Mr. Mayor. The traffic study that could be a requirement at site plan stage would look at all traffic movements, including the pedestrian and the vehicular. Typically, there is a sense of attractiveness to directing vehicle traffic onto back lanes where they can be accommodated safely and in an appropriate manner. So a traffic study potentially could indicate that the laneway for its entirety has to be one way. Alternatively, could indicate that the traffic volume for both this development as well as existing ones that are already present, of course, and ones that are proposed in the future would require that all accesses be off of Ormond Street instead.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I will call the question on this report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PDS 2008-05 recommendation report regarding an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment for 23A St. David Street East. Files OPA 03 2017 and ZBA 11-2017. And I believe that's Ms. Hannah?
Yes. The recommendation of the report are as follows: that the Director of Planning and Development Services report, PDS 2018-05, be approved as presented. That General Committee direct planning staff to prepare the official plan amendment to designate a portion of the lands from open space and parks to urban living area and to permit a density of 113 units per hectare. That the General Committee direct planning staff to prepare the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the lands from residential second density R2S zone and open space OS zone to a site-specific residential fourth density or 4B zone as proposed in Table 1. That the official plan amendment be approved by council, that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved by council, that the necessary bylaws be presented to council at a future meeting, and this concludes the report.
Thank you. Can I get a mover for the reports? Councillor Neal?
So moved.
Speakers to the report. And I will, Councillor Neal.
Regarding flooding problems, I know it states that on their site plan that they'll deal with the flooding on the property itself, but have we had any flooding in that general area over the last few years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be something that the Public Works staff and our engineering department would be able to address better than myself.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any flooding per se, but certainly we can discuss this with staff and provide a follow-up for you.
The reason I ask is that I know there has been flooding problems in the past on Welland Street, just below this project. And I don't know whether it was alleviated by the region, because they did do some upgrading there, or whether there's still a problem. And if there's still a problem, how are we going to address it?
Maybe I can answer that, Councillor. Recently, in the last couple of years, the region has made some substantial upgrades to that pumping station on Welland Street. That's pretty close to the development. And also, years ago when we did have the flooding, we put a big pipe in there and used it like a storage tank. So the water would fill up in that pipe and then gradually be released through the system afterwards. So that, at the time, did alleviate a lot of the problems of the flooding in that sort of like basin right at the corner of Brock Street and Welland Street. And I'll correct myself from before. It's Carlton, the pumping station on Carlton Street. Okay, so that helped a bit, but the upgrades at the pumping station have really done a lot of, has done it all. Basically, it's done, alleviated a lot of the flooding at all. And anyways, if there any flooding, usually in Thorold, I always hear about it.
I know.
Councillor Hanley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Even though there's been upgrades to the pumping station, I don't see any type of impact study here from the region, as we've done for say rolling metals and how much that the impact that the building has in there and the downstream significance. Myself at this time, I don't think I see the information as to go forward with it 100% at this time in regards to situation, in regards to the flooding, traffic study, in regards to the parking. I know we addressed it previously, and Councillor Longo had brought up is that it's practically going to be a public roadway that's going in there, and that part of that public roadway isn't going to be reflected on the amount of parking that's permitted by that development. But Councillor Neal brought up a good point. I've lived here my whole life where the new Thorold Arena once was located. There was once a pond there called Dykes Pond, which then siphoned in across the high school and all behind the Thorold High School, and going in behind Siemens Field, we used to play soccer. We used to call it the jungle, whatever. That was a swamp when I was a kid. And if it wasn't for the infilling, when they eliminated the trestle that went in behind Front Street and all the structure that was there, basically filled it in. I know personally, living in the area and that stuff, it might not rain for 3 weeks, but my sub pump continuously runs. So I don't know if any other councillors have anything to say in regards to it. But at this time, maybe there's some more questions that need to be answered in regards to this development. So I'll wait until any other councillors have something to say in regards to what I may want to propose here to this evening.
Ms. Anna?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as part of the application, a servicing outline was prepared and submitted. That was reviewed by planning and engineering staff and was provided to agencies as well. Within that outline, it was indicated how the stormwater will be addressed on site. It is noted by planning staff that the outline is outline, and that at site plan stage, more detailed plans in the forms of grading plan and a stormwater management plan, as well as more detailed servicing plans in terms of the actual infrastructure that would move the stormwater off the site will be provided. With all developments, both planning and engineering staff ensure that there are no negative impacts in terms of drainage and grading on the adjacent neighbors and the neighborhood. So that will be something that will be reviewed and addressed if needed at site plan stage, and there are no concerns by planning or public works staff at this time in regards to the drainage that would be affected by this proposed development.
Thank you very much. If I could, just one more thing. Do we have any type of study from the region in regard to inflow and what type of impact this development or future developments may have on the pumping station and any current upgrades that have been done to it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the region certainly has a number of flow monitoring instruments that they've put in across the region, including Thorold, as part of the region's wastewater master plan, which was just completed. So there is some opportunity to look at the numbers from the region. Certainly, we would be looking at those numbers in conjunction to looking at what the submitted engineering technical arguments would be, making sure that there is capacity in both the sanitary and the storm sewers before city engineering staff would approve this development. So from a number of different aspects, there will be confirmation that there will be satisfactory capacity prior to approval of the site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one more other question, if I could, to you through to the appropriate staff manager. When we've done developments in the past where an apartment building is going to be, we've taken into consideration the shadowing effect it may have on adjacent properties. I know we did that with the lofts because the hotel, the Sheraton, came forward, if you remember, and they had a concern because it would be shadowing, and we changed the development as to not having an adverse effect on their building. Has any type of study been done in regards to that? What type of impact it may have on the adjoining neighbors in regards to the shadowing effect, and what impact it may have on their lifestyle or enjoyment of life as to the way they see it today? Because I know in the past we've actually done that, and that's been considered by council as the shadowing impact a development may have on adjoining properties.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a shadowing study was not a requirement of this application at the time of pre-consultation meeting. Myself was not present at the pre-consultation meeting, so I can't give insight in terms of the discussion. However, I know from developments that I've worked on in the past, the proposed scale of this development isn't something that would necessarily trigger a shadowing study. Staff have had discussions with the applicant in terms of the effect of the shadowing that this proposed development might have on the adjacent neighborhoods, neighbors, sorry. It is recognized that there obviously will be shadowing on a four-story building. However, the majority of the shadowing will be actually on the municipal land, so the park to the south as well as the municipal right-of-way. There will be some shadowing in winter months onto the adjacent properties to the west, but it is felt that the shadowing will be contained largely within the parcel itself. And if you look on any examples of Google Earth or Niagara Navigator, for instance, you can see the effect within the springtime on adjacent properties of a similar height, and the shadow itself isn't extensive to the effect that it would have a negative impact at that time of year. Planning staff will be working with the applicant further, again, at site plan stage, and that is something that can be addressed with the consultant.
Thank you. Actually, I have one more question. When we first brought up this development, there was concern by a resident who has, at the present time, their driveway, in fact, that they've had the enjoyment of using for a significant amount of years, could be compromised because they, in fact, do not own the property that was going off of St. David's Road onto the adjoining property. Has there been a resolution to that? Is this person going to lose the access to their driveway? Has the person whose property going to be effective had any consultation with the city or let us know on whether or not the enjoyment they had of using that property is going to cease when the development occurs and they will no longer be able to park in a driveway that they've parked in for 30 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, planning staff, namely myself, met with that individual who you are speaking of prior to the public meeting. So we did have conversations both on the current arrangement that they have with what was the former owner of the property, and inform them that they should have discussions with the consultant of the proposal to discuss their concerns. Planning staff did address their concerns and also the information that was received from the applicant's consultant in the information report that was presented at the public meeting. Since that time, planning staff have met with the new owners of the property, and they have indicated that they are not interested in proceeding with a severance at this time. That is not to say that a severance is not potentially going to occur at a later point. They have indicated to planning staff that there is the opportunity to enter into an agreement to have the property owners that are currently using that land for a driveway to continue to use that land as a driveway through a lease agreement, or alternatively, as I said before, at some point to consider doing a severance. But at this time, they wish to retain ownership of the lands itself. And planning staff would also add that currently there is no easement or right-of-way across that driveway. It has been through a private agreement that was reached between two neighboring landowners that the driveway has existed on property that is not the owners of the neighboring property. There is the opportunity and land available to have a driveway on their individual lot, and that would require a permit to be obtained from Public Works staff. So there will not be a negative impact other than installing a driveway on their own property should an agreement not be able to be reached with the developers, but it is the hope of planning staff and I think also the consultant and the new owners to reach an agreement, and that would be done privately, separate from city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the answer, and I'm just uncomfortable with the fact that an individual has been able to use a piece of property for a significant amount of time, regardless of what's said here today. In the strike of a pen, they could be looking at losing something that they've enjoyed for a significant period of time. And I now myself personally wish I would have looked at it further when we gave the piece of land that the city once owned about 3 or 4 months ago to the specific person with development without making assurances that the residents that may be effective have been satisfied 100%. So I'll leave it at that in case any other councilors want to speak to the fact.
Councilor Lago.
Just a few questions, Mr. Mayor. There have been substantial changes to the original proposal, haven't there, in terms of number of units or bedrooms, and the parking has changed?
That is true. So in terms of the proposal that was brought forward at the public meeting, originally there was parking proposed on the municipal road allowance, and the parking was removed from the municipal road allowance. Following the public meeting, based on discussion that engineering and planning staff had with the consultant, we indicated that we wanted to have all of the parking contained on the site for the proposed development. Consequently, because of the increased costs of having underground parking, there was a need to adjust the internal workings of the proposed development to make it economically feasible. And in doing so, the applicant has adjusted the number of 1 and 2 bedroom units that are within. So it's still a 4-story building. It's still the same size of building. Just the unit count in terms of the configuration has changed to make it an economically viable project for them going forward, should they receive approval.
So basically, less residents potentially and more parking than originally provided.
Potentially, the parking is in excess now by 2 parking spaces of the parking requirement, and that is all contained on site itself.
Okay.
And the number has altered in terms of the units itself.
My last question, it just has to do with the setbacks here. Has the position of the building changed at all from the original proposal?
It hasn't changed. Originally, when we were discussing the opportunity for a severance, which was the direction that planning staff had received from the consultant, the frontage would have been on the road allowance because the arm that jets out to St. David Street would no longer exist. So the setbacks are consistent. It's the directions have changed. So for instance, the front yard setback is now being considered still to be St. David Street East instead of what is currently the unimproved road allowance. So the numbers have changed, or have remained consistent.
So my biggest concern is the side yard setbacks. I guess that's what you would call it in planning talk. Is there any way that the building could be moved closer to the new road that's being installed?
Currently, the setback is 3 meters from the new road that would be installed, and that's to the municipal property line, not necessarily the pavement of the road. It could obviously go slightly closer. Traditionally, the 3 meters setback is kind of the standard and where you would want it to be the closest, and that's for snow plowing and maintenance and things of that sort. I have seen cases with development where it goes down to a 0 lot line, but in that case, there are concerns to be raised at building stage to ensure that the foundation is fully on the private property and not the municipal property, and we want to ensure that there's appropriate locations for snow to be stored on site. So in planning staff's opinion, the 3 meters is appropriate.
So I guess my last question is, could you work with the developer to decrease the side yard setback on the new road and increase it for the people on Carlton Street?
So in terms of that, Mr. Mayor, the exterior side yard setback could be reduced further, for instance, to 1.5 meters, which would increase the interior side yard setback. Planning staff would have to discuss with the consultant the impact that would have on the ramp that would be required to service the underground parking facility, because there is an angle at which it is no longer drivable, for lack of better terms. So that would be something that we would have to discuss with the consultant and their engineering consultants. I can't speak to the potential impact that reduction would have on the ramp's gradient at this time.
Okay, well, I would hope that if this is approved, we could do our best to move the building in the easterly direction.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is something that planning staff can follow up and have a conversation with the consultant. And if needed, we can make an adjustment to the numbers before a zoning bylaw comes back to council. For instance, if the 1.5 meter exterior side yard setback is feasible, that is a change that we can make, and we can address the placement of the building in terms of the exterior side yard setback at site plan stage. It's always possible to have a larger number in terms of zoning. However, if we are going to reduce the exterior side yard setback, that would be something that would have to be captured before a zoning bylaw is brought forward for council for approval.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah, one question. The balconies that I see here, is there one that's facing Carlton Street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, through the preliminary site plan elevations that were submitted, there are balconies that are on the two corners of two sides of the building that we were given elevations for, so it can be assumed that they're on all 4 sides of the building. So there would be balconies that are facing Carlton Street. The balconies at this present time appear to be at the corners of the proposed buildings.
Yeah, I noticed, I think, one at the northwest corner, but facing Carlton Street. Could that possibly be moved around so it faces St. David's Road?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be a feature that would be considered and addressed at site plan stage. At this time, planning staff do not have any concept of what the floor plans will be for the proposed development or finalized elevations. Based on the floor plan of the units within the building, it may be feasible to have the balconies adjusted as the councilor is suggesting. However, if the unit is designed such that a corner balcony is what's the result, or alternatively, a shift in that balcony's location would put it more onto the full Carlton exposure of the building, that would be something that would be addressed at site plan stage. But in terms of the balconies itself, in terms of the privacy of the adjacent neighbors, which was raised at the public meeting as a concern, there is the opportunity at the site plan stage to have increased buffering in terms of the height of species that would be planted and the number of species as well.
Well, I would suggest that we try and move the balcony around so it's not facing Carlton Street.
And that's something that planning staff can address at site plan stage. We can't confirm at this stage in the planning process.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Pion.
Thank you. Just a clarification. A shadow study was mentioned before. I just wanted to clarify. I know you said there wasn't one that's automatically triggered. Is that something that at the site plan stage we can, I noticed we can discuss things such as height of building, position of building. A lot of the things we've really been discussing are at the site plan stage. It doesn't really pertain necessarily to this stage of the development. Even though it isn't automatically triggered, does the council still have the option to request such a shadow? Because one of the things that I am concerned about is the height of the building. Not necessarily automatically, but unless I see some sort of a study that says that you're not going to have shadow on a number of people's properties, and also things such as privacy, such as Councillor O'Neill mentioned. If we can address those at the site plan stage, then I think we need to do that. Because I know that the height of the building might or might not cause the shadow problem. So I just wanted to clarify, could we still ask for that, not now, obviously, but at the site plan stage, even though it isn't automatically triggered?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is the opportunity for planning staff to request a shadowing study be presented at the site plan stage, and that if necessary, there could be setbacks to the building proposed at that stage that would decrease the negative impact on shadowing.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, are there any provincial guidelines as to how much, lack of a better term, shadowing is allowed? Or are there any, points after which you say you can't go, just like there are setback regulations, you can't encroach on a neighbor's property to within so many feet. Are there guidelines that tell you that you can't encroach shadow-wise to a neighbor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there aren't any provincial guidelines. There are planning practices, in which case proposed development that is excessive in height would require a shadowing study. So for an example, a building 10 meters or 10 stories, in height would be something that would typically involve a shadowing study. Planning practice does involve the stepping of building. Once it goes over the 3 to 4 story minimum, typically you do see either at the 4 story that the 5th story will be set back, but that's not always practice. But that is something that is done, and that's something that if a shadowing study was to show that stepping back the 4th story, even by a meter or two, would result in a lessened impact on the neighboring properties, that is something that could be addressed at site plan stage.
So a lot of the concerns that we brought up tonight could be brought up at the site planning stage and discussed in detail at that point?
That's true.
Okay, thank you.
Any other speakers? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Next, I guess we have an in-camera. Is this in-camera? No. Okay, we have one clerk's report. CC 2018-07, Community Transportation Grant Program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Goulet?
The recommendations of the report are that staff be authorized to submit a grant application under the Community Transportation Grant Program for consideration of the following projects. A transit study throughout the city with the condition that receiving funding will result in the expansion of our current services to one of the following areas. that the transit study deems necessary. Rolling Meadows, Merritt Meadows, Hansler Heights, Port Robinson Estates, Artisan Ridge, Thorold South. And that council be notified of the requirement to add transit services to one or more of the following areas should the application be successful, which will have a future budget impact. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Ms. Goulet. Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Hanley.
So move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any speakers to this report? Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for some clarification is if we do get the funding for this program for one of the streets that or one of the subdivisions we're looking at, then we're going to have to put funding up and go ahead and do the actual project, whatever it might be. Is this correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. So we have to make sure that we know we're looking at, if we do to get the funding, then we have to go ahead and do the program. It's not that we can decide maybe and maybe not. So when we pass this tonight, we're passing that we're going to have to do a route maybe in Rolling Meadows, for instance. That's what this is all about.
Who's going to speak to that? Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think it's a good thing to submit for because our obligation is to provide transit in the city. And as this city grows and these subdivisions grow, we're going to have to expand our footprint in what we deliver as services in the city. So if we can get a grant and move forward at a pace, one step at a time, because this gives us the capability to pick and choose where we want to do it, then I think that it's very prudent to do.
Councillor Longo.
Yes, just a quick question to staff. If we are successful, and it has Thorold South down here, we already have a route there. Could this be an extension of an existing route, or does it have to be a new service?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding with this grant is that we can get 500,000 over a 5-year period. So what we are trying to utilize that, some money to do a comprehensive transit study, if we can get it funded through this project. Second thing is, as part of the grant program, is that the grant will be provided for expanded services, not for our current use. So what we are trying to understand is that if we do a comprehensive study for the entire city, and there are some expansion of routes, of even our existing route, if we are maintaining a status quo in here, then we are not allowed to receive the funding. However, if we are expanding it, even our existing route, if we are expanding those routes and trying to serve additional community, I think that's the intent of this funding. Thank you.
Can we change the Thorold South to Port Robinson then? Through you, Mr. Mayor, would council entertain changing the Thorold South to Port Robinson? Because currently we have no bus service out there.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other speakers to the report? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Okay, jump into bylaws.
Okay. We're into bylaws. 16A, first reading bylaw. Who's
Councillor Payon.
Okay.
Should I just read the whole thing?
Councillor Pion.
Just the numbers.
Go ahead, Councillor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ugolini, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws. Bylaw number 07-2018, bylaw 08-2018, bylaw 09-2018, bylaw 10-2018, bylaw 11-2018, and bylaw 12-2018.
13. How many?
Is there another one? Oh, sorry, it was obscured by the paperclip. And bylaw 13-2018.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ugolini, that the bylaws just read a first time be read a second and third time and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding.
What do they call this?
All those in favor?
Wrong paper?
Just call the question. Call the vote.
Okay, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. She's throwing papers at me all over the place. That's this.
17A.
17A. Counselor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Council Longo, that the council receive and file the minutes of the committees of council / local boards as presented.
Back to that one. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay.
And then went back.
Could I have a motion to move into closed session to discuss, one, city clerk's verbal report, confidentiality agreement, a trade secret, technical, commercial, financial, supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, groups of persons, or organizations. And the second one, in-camera general committee meeting minutes of February 6. Councilor Ugolini, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
No, I'll pick them up.